Uncover the incredible truth, discover how much Roman slaves cost. A touching journey revealed. Sarah sat in the dimly lit library, the musty smell of aged paper surrounding her like a shroud. Dust particles danced in the thin rays of sunlight filtering through tall, narrow windows. She often found herself lost in the relics of history, but today felt different. Today, a revelation loomed, a weight heavier than she'd ever expected. In her hands, she held a stack of old letters, each one unraveling a narrative steeped in anguish and complexity. Her heart raced with conflicting thoughts. Could it be true? Was her lineage intertwined with a history of cruel exploitation? Her fingers trembled as she sifted through the letters. The words painted a grim picture of her ancestors' involvement as Roman slave traders. It shattered everything she had proudly assumed about her heritage. The discovery gnawed at her conscience. Was she honoring or vilifying her family's name? The proud lineage she had longed to uncover only revealed betrayal hidden beneath layers of time. Each sentence deepened her conflict, each revelation tightened the coil of dread in her stomach. As she neared the end of the pile, emotions surged. She recalled her mother's voice, instilling resilience and the importance of truth. Yet here she was, grappling with a legacy that contradicted everything her mother stood for. How could she reconcile this newfound reality with the ideals that had shaped her upbringing? Hard work, honor, integrity, all muddied now in the shadow of her ancestors' greed. Before she could settle her thoughts, she was jolted back into the present by an unwelcome memory. A local historian from the university had scoffed at her research last week, dismissing it as mere artifacts of days long gone. "It's not worth your efforts," he had said, leaving her feeling like a child in a world of academics. The weight of his condescension stung even now. The doubt crept in like an unwelcome guest, wrapping her in a suffocating embrace. What if he was right? Was she merely digging up the dead in vain? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she resumed her exploration, more letters surfaced, each one revealing deeper secrets entwined within her family's past. The mounting pressure weighed heavily on her, with whispers of doubt flooding her mind. A sharp pang of anxiety gripped her. The community she adored might resist her findings. The thought of their outrage paralyzed her. Influential townsfolk murmured about reputation and tradition. Could her quest for truth spark a backlash that put her in the crosshairs of their disdain? Just moments before her presentation, doubt coursed through her like poison, twisting her insides. Could unearthing these painful realities restore her family's honor, or would it fracture the very foundation of her identity? As Sarah took a deep breath, she could feel the anticipation in the air, the silent judgment of the townsfolk weighing on her. She gripped the edges of the podium, heart hammering against her ribcage. Was she ready to confront a legacy that threatened to shatter everything she believed? She yearned to face the truth, yet fear encased her like a vice, doubting whether the past should be left undisturbed. In that moment, she understood the abyss of her struggle: honor or disgrace, vindication or shame. She stood on a precipice, poised to plunge into the depths of her emotional turmoil. With a deep inhale, Sarah closed her eyes, anchoring herself amidst the tumult of emotions that threatened to swallow her whole. The murmurs of the crowd swirled around her, a cacophony of opinions and judgments, each one amplifying the weight of her own fears. Yet, as she opened her eyes and surveyed the expectant faces before her, she felt a flicker of resolve ignite within. This was not merely a presentation, it was an introspection, a confrontation with her own history. She recognized that her research went beyond her ancestors' actions. It was about the significance of reckoning with the past and how it shaped her personal identity. The historian's scornful dismissal echoed, but now she viewed it as fuel rather than poison. Who was he to dictate the relevance of her truth? As she began to speak, her voice caught momentarily a delicate tremor that branded the air with vulnerability. But with each word that followed, she felt shards of doubt begin to dissolve, replaced with a growing determination. She meticulously articulated the plight of those who had been commodified, their lives traded for silver and gold, emphasizing the moral implications and consequences that rippled through time. The words poured forth as she shared her mother's legacy of resilience. "We cannot turn a blind eye to history," she declared. "To honor our heritage means acknowledging the darker aspects, learning from them, and ensuring they are never repeated." The crowd's expressions shifted, their initial skepticism blurring into contemplation. She could see a few nodding, their brows furrowing as they connected with her honesty. The applause was faint but genuine, a sound that resonated like a heartbeat in her chest rather than a mere accolade. But as Sarah stepped away from the podium, she was acutely aware that the hardest part was yet to come. Engaging in authentic dialogue would demand not only her courage but also her compassion, confronting those who had previously dismissed her efforts. In the days following her presentation, Sarah wrestled with the aftermath. The narrative had taken root in the community, but so had resistance. Some of the townsfolk began to alter their perspectives, while others dug their heels in deeper, clutching to the comfort of tradition. Sarah felt it churn within her, this conflict between her burgeoning sense of purpose and the weight of cultural expectation. She spent hours at the library, no longer merely seeking relics of the past, but contemplating the constructive path forward. In the fading warmth of dusk, she jotted notes, outlining a plan, a community discussion aimed at bridging the gap between harsh realities and the collective narrative of pride. But the prospect was daunting. Would they come? Would they listen? Each night, her resolve waned and surged like the tide. With each passing day, her ambition to illuminate the truth grew, but so too did the trepidation of facing the potential backlash. The thought of challenging long-held beliefs felt like standing at an intersection, each direction promising new struggles, but only one forged the road toward genuine transformation. As she prepared for the conversation, she realized it was more than an initiative, it was an opportunity to redefine what it meant to honor her heritage while embracing the lessons learned through those painful revelations. But was she ready to face the very people she admired, those who might see her as a traitor to their collective memory? With that uncertainty swirling in her mind, Sarah felt the familiar prick of anxiety return. The time had come to confront not only her past but her community as well. Would her courage to speak the truth galvanize others to join her, or would it solidify the walls that existed between them? The weight of her decisions loomed large, and she took a deep breath, ready to step into the unknown. Determined, she moved forward, her heart racing, knowing she was about to face not just her own demons, but those of her community. An inevitable reckoning was on the horizon. The morning sun filtered through the window of Sarah's cluttered study, casting long shadows across the papers strewn with notes, sketches, and research outlines. While the light warmed the room, her mind felt tethered to a tumult of cold doubt. Each tick of the clock echoed like a drum, reminding her of the impending moment of reckoning when she would face the very community she sought to engage. The idea of confrontation unnerved her, yet it was tinged with a sense of inevitability. In this haven of knowledge, she clutched a small photo of her mother, holding it tightly as if seeking strength from the past. It was a simple moment, a smile exchanged over a shared memory, but those eyes held generations of struggle and perseverance. Sarah remembered her mother speaking about their lineage, how the truth was a clasp holding their identity together. Now, as she contemplated her own path, her mother's voice surged within her, urging her to press onward. As lunch approached, Sarah organized her notes meticulously, transforming them into a presentation that could bridge the divide she sensed. "I am not here to reject tradition," she muttered to herself, emboldened. "I'm here to expand it." This realization cracked the armor of fear that had encased her heart. It was a revelation of her hidden competence. She had the ability to face the antagonism, not with aggression but with compassion and understanding. However, the anxiety lingered like a specter. What if they rejected her? What if the discussion spiraled into conflict rather than understanding? Each question seemed to sharpen her resolve. For every hesitation that rattled in her mind, an undeniable truth emerged: she could not bury the past any longer, she had a responsibility to reveal it. The community hall stood intimidatingly tall that evening, its facade a reminder of the shared history, a history which she intended to unearth. She arrived early, pacing the wooden floorboards in contemplation, forcing her breaths to steady. Her personal transformation was unfolding before her eyes, and the visibility of this collective truth felt heavy. As attendees shuffled in, she noted their expressions, some reflective and some dismissive, each face a story, whispering of connections to the past she'd unearthed. With each familiar face she recognized, her heart raced, arteries of history intertwining with her own. When the room quieted, Sarah stepped forward, a mixture of excitement and fear swelling inside her. "Thank you for gathering," she began, the tremor in her voice giving way to clarity. "Today, I ask you to join me on a journey. One that reflects our history honestly, where we face the uncomfortable truths that we carry forward." She felt a shift, subtle yet palpable. Their eyes met hers, questions dancing between them. Some were skeptical, while others seemed eager to understand. It was the first small step into a dialogue that could redefine their collective memory. As she unveiled her plan, a discussion grounded in empathy and historical insights, the atmosphere thickened with tension, and she braced for the rebuttals she knew would come. "This is not to shame our heritage," she reiterated, emphasizing the role of understanding in honoring their past. "Rather, it is to empower our future." The exchanges began, and Sarah engaged with voices both supportive and critical. Each comment, whether supportive or dismissive, fueled her resolve. Yet, with every challenge posed, she was increasingly reminded of her purpose. When the time came for an audience question, a respected elder stood, brow furrowed in disapproval. "How do you expect us to accept a narrative that threatens our pride?" The room held its breath, and in that moment, Sarah understood this was the crucible she needed to face. Her palms dampened, but she steadied her resolve. What if our pride embraces the truth of our past as a foundation for a more inclusive future? Silence hung like a dense fog, then curiosity flickered in the elder's eyes, a thread of possibility woven into the tension. The subsequent silence felt electric. They were on the brink of transformation. Sarah's heart raced, but beneath the apprehension, a newfound strength began to blossom. She had forged a connection through shared vulnerability and honesty, inching closer to a dialogue she had once feared. Would this be the first of many revelations towards change? What would she uncover through the echoes of their responses? As she stood before them, weaving through their skepticism and doubt, she realized the journey was far from over. What lay ahead held the promise of deeper understanding, yet it was only just beginning. As the silence faded, Sarah felt an undercurrent of anticipation coursing through the room. The elder's challenging question lingered, resonating within the hearts of everyone present. She could almost hear their conflicting thoughts swirling together, the pride of their history clashing with the shadows of overlooked truths. Digging deep, she focused on the elder's skepticism, committed to framing her response as an opportunity for connection rather than conflict. "Your pride is valid," she began, her voice steadying with conviction. "It has shaped who you are, but consider this, embracing our full history doesn't diminish our worth, it enhances our understanding. By confronting the uncomfortable aspects of our past, we can honor those who came before us and build a foundation for future generations that is richer and deeper." A murmur rippled through the audience. Sarah noticed some nodding, an encouraging sign that perhaps they were beginning to see a glimmer of worth in her words. She pressed on, determined, seeking to break the restraints of her earlier anxiety. "Each story we carry is like a thread in a tapestry," she continued, weaving her narrative carefully. "While some threads are vibrant, others are dark, but together, they create a picture. A complete narrative that does justice to all parts of our experience." For a fleeting moment, Sarah locked eyes with the elder again, who appeared slightly softened, the crease in his brow easing just a bit. Another voice, younger and exuberant, chimed in. "But what if diving into our past unearths things we'd rather not face? What if it hurts us?" And there it was, another challenge. A shadow of doubt reignited her earlier fears. she recognized her own trepidation mirrored in the audience's expressions. But isn't pain a part of growth? She countered, her voice rising with passion. Engaging with our history, even its most painful sections, allows us to heal and move forward. It's our chance to ensure that history does not repeat itself. The hum of the room fluctuated. Some faces displayed unease while others showed a flicker of intrigue. Sarah grasped the power of these exchanges. They offered the potential for dialogue and understanding. Each question, each retort pushed her to uncover her own resilience. As she facilitated the discussion, she began to illuminate facets of her own journey that had been buried beneath layers of fear. Sarah spoke of how her research had revealed hidden dimensions to her family's past stories that echoed struggles her ancestors had faced. With each revelation, she added another thread to the tapestry, shaping her own identity amidst the resonance of her heritage. A thought ignited within her: this moment was fundamental not just for her, but for her community as well. If she could open the door to honest, meaningful discussions, then perhaps they could transform this discomfort into strength. But the moment of true confrontation had not yet come. Faced with the daunting prospect of continued scrutiny, Sarah's heart clenched. Could she sustain this energy? What would happen when pushback returned, armed with the fear that change could mean losing something dear? Her internal monologue quieted, and she recognized a deeper urgency coursing through her veins. This was a pivotal moment, not only in her journey but in the community's narrative. As she caught glimpses of hope and doubt battling it out in each face before her, she understood that real change hinged on her ability to connect truthfully, to remind them of their shared humanity, and most importantly, to embrace the tension that came with it. But then another question slipped through the crowd, a familiar voice emerging from the back, dripping with skepticism. What if, in your pursuit of truth, you only ignite divisions deeper than the ones we already have? Is that truly progress? The tension in the room thickened once more, and Sarah felt the stakes rising. The moment of reckoning was at hand, one that could either solidify her connection or shatter her aspirations. Would the truth she sought to unearth unify them, or would it fracture the fragile understanding she had begun to cultivate? As she took a deep breath, steeling herself for the answer she was about to give, the echoes of her mother's teachings surged through her mind. How far was she prepared to go to confront not just the community's truth, but her own? It was time to face the heart of the matter, not just for them but for herself. The moment Sarah stood before the gathered crowd, her resolve firmed like steel. The hall, once a sanctuary of history and pride, now dripped with uncertainty, shadows dancing across the walls as they waited for her response. She could feel their eyes questioning, skeptical, yearning for reassurance, and realized that this was a critical intersection of her personal and professional development. Progress, she said slowly, her voice piercing the dense air, without discomfort. It's like shedding an old skin. It might feel vulnerable, even painful at first. But only in this stripped-down state can we grow anew. She saw the elder's brow furrow further, challenge suppressing his potential willingness to see another side. Yet, her confidence hardened. This was her moment to confront not just their fears, but her own. Let us ask ourselves, what are we protecting by hiding parts of our story? Fear only deepens divisions, it cannot heal or strengthen. So yes, uncovering our past may reveal uncomfortable truths, but in those truths lies the opportunity for reconciliation. With each word, she felt a weight lift, a flicker of empowerment ignited within her. Her hands trembled slightly. They were no longer instruments of anxiety but tools to shape understanding. Sarah took a breath, grounding herself in the moment, then pressed forward. What's at stake is our chance to evolve, to forge a collective identity that acknowledges its complexities while still celebrating resilience. She searched the crowd, seeking connection, the glimmers of hope amidst the looming doubt. What we think of as divisions may simply be the seams of our tapestry, waiting to be woven together. The skepticism didn't vanish. She noted it in the audience's frowns and crossed arms. Yet, there were nods. Individual expressions softened here and their curiosity tickled at the edges of uncertainty. Remnants of pride gave way to a willingness to listen. It was a triumph, however small, but the voices from the back punctured her cautious optimism. Are you willing to risk further rifts? The young voice from earlier rebutted, laced with doubt. People are comfortable with what they know. Why pull at the seams when they might unravel completely? As Sarah considered the question, her heart raced. An unfamiliar sensation washed over her, awakening a familiarity, doubt that sneakily lodged itself in her mind, the kind she had felt throughout her journey, particularly in her research. She realized this was not just about the community, it was about her own fears of vulnerability and confrontation. If we remain in comfort, we stagnate, Sarah countered, her tone shifting from defensive to persuasive. Bravery isn't about the absence of fear, it's about taking action despite it. This journey might be messy, it might hurt, but only through the struggle can we fortify ourselves. The atmosphere shifted again, discontent mingled with reflection as murmurs swept the gathering. To herself, Sarah acknowledged the revelation of her own resilience. This confrontation asked as much from her personally as it did from the crowd. Her body vibrated with both trepidation and exhilaration. If she could confront the fear she'd carried since childhood, the fear of her own history, then perhaps they too could find the courage to embrace theirs. Then it struck her, the truth she sought wasn't merely an abstract concept but an experience messier, more complex than she had imagined. It was time to share her most profound discovery, one she had kept guarded. You see, she began, her voice quieter, tinged with vulnerability, the more I've learned about my ancestry, the more I realized I was afraid of repeating history. It's not the past I fear, and I suspect you can resonate, it's what we do with it moving forward. As she uttered those words, she found herself standing on the precipice of deep self-discovery. In that moment, she became aware that every challenge she faced bore not only a risk but also an opportunity to heal, to learn, and perhaps, to ignite collective courage. With her heart thundering, Sarah declared, will we allow our past to guide us toward understanding, or will we let it trap us in a cycle of fear? The air hung heavy with anticipation, and Sarah knew she was on the brink of tremendous change, not just for the audience but for herself. The thread of her narrative remained taut, poised to unravel exhilarating truths, and as she gripped that pivotal moment, another question loomed, beckoning her to explore deeper into the fabric of her journey. What hidden truths lay within her own history that could unite them all, and would she have the strength to face them? The audience shifted in their seats, the intrigue ripe in the air, as Sarah stood in the spotlight. A part of her knew she had pushed through a barrier she once thought impenetrable. The question she had posed sat heavily between her and the crowd, reverberating through the vaulted hall, teasing at the edges of answers yet to be revealed. What was her own uncertainty rooted in? As she looked into the faces staring back at her, a question emerged from deep within: what pieces of herself had she yet to uncover? The crowd's apprehension mirrored her own internal conflict. The weight of this realization pressed harder against her chest. She had navigated the histories of others, yet had she truly faced her own? The murmurs began to dissolve into silence, everyone awaited her next words. Before I can ask this community to engage with discomfort, I need to acknowledge the discomfort within me. The vulnerable admission seemed to resonate. She felt a palpable shift in their energy, a shared understanding that transcended individual fears. She clenched her fists, feeling the dampness of her palms but pressing on regardless. My journey into our past hasn't just been an academic endeavor, it's been a journey through my own identity. I was raised with the stories of those who came before me, but those stories felt more like a curse than a blessing at times. I became a prisoner to their pain. The elder she had noticed earlier shifted slightly, the hardness in his expression softening just enough for her to discern the hint of curiosity glinting in his eyes. Sarah continued, these narratives burdened me, like chains holding back my potential. But recognizing this has been liberating. I no longer seek to just study history, I want to transform it. Their faces conveyed a mix of skepticism and budding empathy, and Sarah seized this moment to confront her own buried truths. Let me share with you a moment from my past that crystallized this for me. When I was a child, I stumbled upon a box of letters from my great-grandparents. They wrote about their struggles, family separations, heartbreak. I remember feeling the weight of their words, but I didn't understand their impact until much later. She recalled the feeling of crumpling those letters, overwhelmed by the raw emotion spilling from the ink. At that age, I wanted to bury them, to ignore the pain that had seeped into my lineage. I hoped that by glossing over our past, I could escape its grip. But as I grew older, I realized, to dismiss their experiences is to dismiss my own growth. It was then I understood I must face my history with courage, not resistance. The room air thickened with tension, each whispered word she spoke hanging in the air like a fragile thread. A light kindled in some of the eyes before her. History teaches us valuable lessons, but it is relived only through our acceptance and understanding. If we let fear guide us, we cannot evolve. Questions began to bubble under the surface of her resolve. Had she truly come to terms with her past? Or was she still avoiding deeper discoveries, shame, anger, and the fear of leaving behind parts of her identity? The more she thought about it, the more she felt a surge of determination. But then guilt overcame her for having distanced herself from those emotional elements. What I seek to invite you all into isn't merely a dialogue about our past. It's a deeper exploration of communal healing, where every burden shared can lessen its hold. She glanced around the room, gauging reactions. The elder's brow remained furrowed, but his lips barely twitched upwards in encouragement or skepticism. She couldn't tell, the final knot of her resolve twisted. I am still unlearning, still discovering how my identity has been shaped by those very narratives I once feared. I challenge each of you to reflect on your own histories, on what stories you carry. What binds or constrains you? And what do you fear most about unveiling those truths? The hall dimmed around her as a stillness enveloped the space. The stakes felt heightened, an impending possibility of change, but also the risk of unearthing long-buried emotions. Sarah sensed she was on the cusp of a revelation that could redefine her journey, not just in the eyes of the crowd, but in her own self. She took a deliberate breath, preparing herself to dive even deeper into her own past, a risk worth taking as she lifted her chin, ready to confront whatever truths awaited her. Would the journey forward reveal the answers she sought, or would it lead her down a path of deeper turmoil? The uncertainty loomed large as she stepped back toward her vulnerable narrative, determined to meet what lay ahead. As the moment hung in the air, Sarah took a tentative step further into vulnerability, the crowd's anticipation palpable. She felt as if she stood on the precipice of a personal abyss, the contents of her own emotional landscape swirling beneath her. She could sense the tension, balancing on a knife edge, a mix of hope and fear. What lay beneath this outreach to her audience? Was it still just fear, or had something more profound swelled within her? She started to speak again, her voice steadier this time. In confronting the past, I realized that the silence I clung to was not protecting me. It was suffocating me. Each unshared fear, each suppressed story, built walls between who I was and who I could be. The room absorbed her words, some faces betraying a hint of recognition. During my darkest moments, particularly in the solitary corners of my graduate studies, I often felt detached. It wasn't merely academic detachment, it was emotional disconnection. I was a historian seeking truths while I was blind to my own, she added, each sentence becoming a step deeper into her own reflection. The weight of her confession was met with stillness. Had her struggle mirrored that of the secrets she stitched into her history, the elder's shifted posture signaled contemplation. What if this journey is not as linear as I wish it to be? What if acceptance is not an end but another beginning? She mused internally, the implications of that thought sending ripples of uncertainty through her. Suddenly, Sarah recalled an argument with her mentor, a brilliant but intimidating figure, who had challenged her view on ethics within her research. History should not be a weapon, nor a shield, but a path to connection, he had insisted. In that moment, Sarah recognized her own contradictions. While she pushed for connection through historical truths, she had avoided those experiences within her own life. That revelation was like a cold splash of water on her face. As she stood there, a flicker of resolve ignited in her, faster than the flood of doubt attempting to drown it out. What if collective healing begins with individual courage? What if the story I'm searching for, the one I want to share, needs to live first within my own consciousness? The clarity shook her. A choice was upon her. Let us begin together to strip away the barriers we've constructed, to explore what true understanding means. She glanced at the audience, searching for signs of agreement or skepticism, but finding both mixed emotions echoed in their eyes, reflecting her own inner turmoil. The elder, distraction dissipating, leaned forward. "And how do you plan to lead this exploration?" His deep voice reverberated in her mind, imposing yet wielding an inviting curiosity. She realized this was not merely a challenge, it was an invitation to step forward into her own narrative. Gathering herself, she replied, "I will use the very stories that have haunted me. They need not be chains, but tools for liberation. I will share my pain, my mistakes, and perhaps my journey from those shadows into light. Together, we can turn fear into understanding and hurt into dialogue." The weight of her proposition hung in the air, heavy with implications. What would she uncover in that process? Could her own story provide the pathway to understanding others? Her mind raced with the implications. Each cascading thought tugged at the fabric of her self-identity, the psychological knots she had yet to untangle. Suddenly, an emotional tether snapped. Fear mocked her, whispering that the past would resurface, that shadows long banished would claw at her once more. Yet, with the chilling certainty that discovery awaited, she felt a renewed vigor surge through her veins. "I will delve deeper into my own stories. I'll face them with all their repercussions. And through that, perhaps I'll help this room do the same," she finished, her heart pounding. As silence enveloped the room once again, Sarah stood poised at the threshold of confrontation, not just with her past, but with the uncertainty of where this exploration might lead. Would she be able to remain anchored as layers of her identity unraveled? What truths would surface, and how would they reshape her journey? The audience's eyes were mirrors, reflecting the very questions she feared, yet craved to confront. Ready to take the plunge, Sarah stood firm, prepared to navigate her own emotional terrain, determined to lead others through the thorny undergrowth along with her. Yet as she faced them, the shadows of past decisions loomed large. How would she confront the moments where she chose silence over truth? Would her own defense mechanisms rise again, creating barriers just when she sought bridges? The path forward lay fraught with peril and promise. She felt the weight of that choice squarely on her shoulders. In the quiet aftermath of her declaration, Sarah felt the air thicken with unspoken words. Each gaze in the audience became an unfurling tapestry of experiences, anxieties, and hopes, mirroring her own trepidation, yet igniting her resolve. She had stepped into a new realm of potential, one driven by authenticity and raw vulnerability. But this was merely the beginning. As she gathered her thoughts, the reality of her choice pressed heavily on her chest. How would she structure this journey of reconstruction, both for herself and those willing to follow? She envisioned a series of narrative threads, each woven from threads of her past moments of shame, regret, and courage, unfolding into a narrative that felt both personal and universal. What now? She thought, a question that echoed in the stillness. Seeking some clarity, Sarah decided to take a walk through her memories, hoping the exercise would yield insight. She stepped off the stage and into the back of the room, where the vibrant colors of the audience faded into a blur. The isolation was soothing, allowing her mind to roam freely. Recalling a pivotal moment during her freshman year, Sarah hurriedly scribbled notes in the margins of her history texts, trying to suppress what was brewing beneath the surface. She was more than a student consumed by academia, she was a survivor navigating a labyrinth of emotional obstacles. In that moment, she grasped the vital connection between her academic pursuits and her personal battles. But would this retrospective exploration lead her to the truths she sought, or would it drown her in absolutes? That lingering doubt stopped her in her tracks. Am I ready to unveil everything? She questioned, grappling with the myriad fragments of her identity. With each step back toward the stage, Sarah resolved to embrace the uncomfortable. A collective healing began with the willingness to share, to merge scholarly inquiry with the wrenching honesty of lived experience. She remembered her mentor's voice echoing in her mind, advocating for history's balance between weapon and bridge. This healing could create pathways. Returning to her audience, the faces now appeared almost ethereal, captivated, expectant. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself as she stepped back into focus. Together, we'll unravel these narratives. But this journey requires a bold leap into honesty about the darkest alleys of our experiences, she stated, a fervor building within her. As the words came forth, she felt an unfamiliar strength course through her. This was not merely autobiographical, it was exploratory. Would her tales form a collective consciousness, stitching connections that once felt irreparable? She envisioned a dialogue where truths could coexist, where bringing up discomfort served as an invitation rather than a deterrent. Tonight, I am asking for your partnership. As I share my truths, I invite you to reflect on yours, she boldly delineated, noticing a ripple of anticipation course through her audience. Courage is not in the absence of fear, but in the will to confront it. The audience's energy shifted. Some leaned forward, intent on letting their own truths tumble forth, while others hesitated, the weight of their own past seemingly pinning them to the seats. In that shared moment of recognition, she felt solidarity grow, tethering them through a common yet unique narrative. As she began to recount a painful chapter involving an unexpected betrayal in her early career, Sarah's voice trembled but steadied with each word. The story, once a source of anguish, now unfolded as a lesson, a testament to resilience amidst turmoil. Each revelation nudged her closer to liberation, stripping away the overbearing layers of shame. Yet, as she delved deeper, another realization struck: would every story shared lead to understanding, or might it also evoke discomfort, perhaps rejection? Dread threatened to encroach upon her burgeoning confidence. What if not everyone recognized the courage in her vulnerability? Chilling doubts raced through her, yet the urging cause of vulnerability and authenticity battled back, igniting a fierce determination. Instead of retreating, she stood firm, her fear fueling a newly discovered conviction. I expect discomfort, confusion. I expect passion and fear, she declared. But beyond all of this, I will forge ahead, seeking the bone-deep truth that nourishes not only me but all of us. As the first notes of camaraderie blossomed within the room, Sarah recognized that each story told was an invitation to transformation, a door swung wide open. But still, the shadows of her past beckoned, casting doubt amid the resolute confidence she desperately clung to. How much was she willing to reveal? The time was drawing near where she would have to confront those who lurked in the recesses of her memories. The provocative thought surged through her: what if tonight was just the beginning of more formidable confrontations? Would the words she unearthed truly echo in the souls of others, or simply brush past their armor? Without answers, the next chapter loomed heavily before her. Would she confront not just her long-buried fears but also those people who had once defined her silence? Stepping back onto the stage, Sarah's heart raced in tandem with the scattered thoughts racing through her mind. The first pulse of uncertainty began to thrum, a steady beat resonating with the urgency to both share and protect. The connection she had fostered in the room was intoxicating, but the prospect of revealing deeper truths left her breathless. She was acutely aware now that each layer she peeled back not only disclosed delicate memories but also wielded the potential to hurt or heal both herself and her audience. The weight of this responsibility anchored her feet, yet propelled her forward. As she scanned the faces looking up, she felt the shift from apprehension to anticipation. Let me share another chapter, she began, directing her voice into the room. One that forced me to confront not only betrayal but the shadowy edges of my self-worth. As she began recounting an experience with a mentor-turned-adversary, the vivid details surged to the surface. In her recollection, she was sitting in a small office, a storm of confidence having begun to swirl. That climax, the moment of betrayal, transpired within four unyielding walls. She recalled the fleeting praise that morphed into criticism, the encouragement that was suddenly snatched away. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, echoing her own disbelief from years past. Each word she spoke carried remnants of the fear that had gripped her then, and she felt her voice intertwine with the audience's growing empathy. I faced a choice, she continued, to spiral downwards into doubt or to fight back with newfound resolve. My instinct was to shrink, to be invisible just as I had always done when challenged. The revelation brought an intense clarity. Sarah realized that within the shadows of her past, the visceral instinct to reclaim her voice had emerged. But authentic power required more than just a voice, it demanded confrontation not only of external adversaries but also of the internal critic she had long harbored. What if the perception of her worth hinged entirely on the approval of others? This thought struck deeply, leaving a chasm she hadn't anticipated opening anew. I chose to rewrite my narrative, she pressed on, her heart pounding with an electrifying surge of determination. I trained harder, pushed boundaries, and most importantly I began to surround myself with those who believed in me. A flicker of realization ignited within her. She had transformed those betrayals into fuel, leveraging them as catalysts instead of shackles. And yet an unexpected tension lingered, the shadows of past adversities beckoning. Wouldn't they return if she stood too firmly in the light? As she spoke, Sarah noticed a wavering expression on one woman's face, woven with a mix of despair and intrigue. Was this someone who had sought to reclaim herself amidst the echoes of past pain? That connection solidified her intent. The audience was here merely to listen, they were willing to traverse this labyrinth with her. The room seemed to pulse around her, each breath a collective exchange of vulnerability. Together, we can reclaim our narratives, Sarah articulated, the weight of her emerging leadership sinking in. It's in our stories that we rediscover strength. The applause that followed felt like a tide pulling her closer to a shore she had almost forgotten existed. Yet, out of the corner of her mind, an unsettling sensation began to brew. With each shared tale, had she unwittingly set herself up for new challenges, perhaps even confrontations with those she had evaded? What awaited her as she ventured deeper into this realm of honesty? The faces in the crowd, once supportive, could just as easily morph into critics once she turned the spotlight on them. As she stood anchored in this moment, Sarah knew she had narrowly skimmed the surface of unearthing her truths. Each revelation was a ripple in a broader ocean of what lay ahead. The upcoming confrontations were no longer the distant specter of her memory, but looming figures that she would soon have to face directly. Would this journey dismantle her defenses or fortify her resolve? With that thought lingering, she concluded, sensing the shift in energy around her. Tomorrow, when the stories echo in our hearts, we must be ready to confront the shadows together. And as she stepped back, the question hung in the air: who or what awaited her when she dared to venture into the depths of her past? Days turned into weeks as Sarah continued her commitment to unveiling the complex tapestry of her heritage and the truths intertwined within the community's narrative. Her initial presentation had unlocked an avenue for dialogue that left her both empowered and vulnerable. As she mobilized a series of discussions in the town hall, she saw engagement bloom where once there had been silence. Skeptics began to ask questions, attendees shared their own stories of discomfort and healing. Each conversation reinforced her growth, solidifying a newfound confidence she had never envisioned. Having diverted initial fears into profound connection, Sarah's brave exploration of her lineage kindled a transformative journey. No longer was she simply a historian uncovering the truths of her ancestry, she had become a conduit for communal healing. The reverberations of her shared vulnerability rippled outward, laying the groundwork for a gathering that transcended personal quests for recognition and identity. One evening, amid the familiar faces in the crowd, she presented a particularly challenging topic: the psychological burden of rejection. She drew upon a pivotal moment from her past, the day she comprehended her own identity, grappling with the notion that honoring her ancestors could simultaneously mean confronting the pain they had caused. As she spoke, the room's atmosphere thickened, hanging heavily with shared acknowledgement. Each member wrestled with their complexities alongside her. You see, she explained, a thread of determination stitching her voice, to claim ownership of our narratives, we must accept that vulnerability is where strength germinates. I had to embrace my own history to forge forward, and through that process, I realized how it also provided a mirror for us all. The attendees responded with murmurs of understanding. Sarah felt an overwhelming wave of recognition wash over her. The transformations had transcended her personal journey and sparked a collective convergence towards healing. Poised in front of them, she witnessed the doubt lift from eyes, replaced by a glow of shared purpose. Their engagement was no longer passive, it was a tapestry being woven collectively. With each chapter of her past she revealed, she not only bartered her pain but also offered strength to those who shared similar battles. Her story had become a vessel of healing, tethering her experience proximately to those before her, encouraging each participant to confront their own shadows while supporting one another. An elder, once adamantly opposed to Sarah's submissions, now leaned forward. "Your courage has sparked us to reconsider the confines of our pride," he said, gratitude lacing his tone. This acknowledgement not only validated her work, it amplified her confidence as she navigated the complexity of her emotions. By articulating her tribulations related to betrayal and despair, she made way for others to dissect the weight of their burdens with compassion. The elder's remark acted as a pendulum, swinging her toward a newfound realization: she was not the only one undergoing change. Together, they were undergoing a renaissance. They were opening avenues to explore the lighter and darker threads that shaped their legacy as individuals and as a unified community. As time progressed, Sarah's work gained momentum. The community initiative she spearheaded transformed into an authentic movement of healing and exploration, featuring discussions, artwork, and storytelling that illuminated the many facets of their shared history. Their stories, laden with pain, resilience, and hope, commingled, crafting a vibrant representation of solidarity and understanding. Standing in the vibrant hall filled with enthusiastic voices reflecting on their shared narratives, Sarah felt a rush of elation. She had indeed fostered a bridge between discomfort and empowerment, and the true essence of honor lay in embracing both the luminescence and shadows of their pasts. It was a powerful reminder that personal fulfillment and societal legacy could exist in tandem. With full confidence surging within, Sarah drew on everything she had learned. She had emerged not just as an informative historian but as a transformative leader within her community, garnering respect from those who had once questioned her character. The applause that surged around her was unmistakably rooted in genuine acknowledgement, a celebratory validation of her journey and precisely the catalyst she needed for her next chapter. As she stepped off stage, feelings of satisfaction wrapped around her, an exhilarating blend of clarity and purpose. Sarah's journey from uncovering uncomfortable truths to fostering meaningful dialogue had profoundly reshaped her identity, cementing her place as an advocate for both history and healing. She had accomplished what she set out to achieve and transformed into a potent example of courage, the essence of resilience resonating powerfully within her. This was not merely a culmination, this was a visionary beginning. The call to action reverberates louder now than ever. If you felt inspired by Sarah's journey and the revelations within these stories, you need to subscribe now. Engage. Leave a like. Your support helps us reach others on this path of personal growth. Comment below with your reactions and theories about what you've witnessed. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need this message of resilience. Let us spread wisdom and empowerment together.